Paul finally made it back. Just kidding. Debbie, are we ready in the back? Okay, wonderful. Okay, it is 2:01, however, and we will go ahead and call this board briefing to order. And we have a couple of topics today. The first one is our utility tax feasibility evaluation. And Rachel, I see that you're here, and I see that Nick appears to be here as well. So I'll just have you kick us off.
Yeah, Nick, you can join us. And oh, there you are. Can you pin him too? Yeah, thank you. So Nick is joining us with Tiberius Solutions. He is brought to us from our highly esteemed consultant Mike Gleason to help us with some of our financial work. Out of the last year's budget roundtable discussions, one of the concepts to generate revenue that was identified and was very popular to pursue was the concept of the county imposing a utility fee, franchise fee. Um, and so we pursued that with Nick's support as a contractor, and we quickly found out it is not just as simple as a utility tax or franchise fee. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and there's actually some more options. So Nick dove into this work. Deborah, representing the executive team, has been meeting with Nick and I about weekly since November. Nick delivered his findings in the report, which I shared with you a few days ago. That assessment was reviewed and deliberated on by the executive team January 30th, and they supported the findings and the recommendations on how to proceed. So it's been through a couple of iterations through your staff and support, and today Nick's going to present what he analyzed, findings, recommendations, and then I'll wrap up with some literal next steps if you'd like to proceed. So Nick, or do you have questions before we kick it over to Nick? All right, Nick, your slides are up and ready for your presentation.
All right, thank you. Glad to be able to meet with you all virtually today and go over this analysis. I'm going to try to not dive too deep into the weeds, but by all means, let me know if you have any questions. And given the way that I'm presenting and sharing my screen right now, I actually can't see you all because I've got the PowerPoint up covering my screen. So just give a shout if you need me to stop rambling on so that you can get a question in.
Will do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I've been doing this kind of public sector financial work for just about 20 years now. I've done hundreds of projects for similar government agencies across 7 different states. And so we have quite a bit of knowledge on the topic of just raising governmental revenues. And so we're doing some broader analysis for you, working on another project right now where we're looking at a much wider range of potential revenue options. But the first task that we were asked to look into was a utility fee analysis. And the first question I had when we were asking to evaluate a utility fee is, well, what kind of utility fee are we talking about? So there's a number of terms that get kicked around here. There are franchise fees, utility privilege tax, utility license fee. Those three all sound different, but in reality, they function the same way. We also talk about utility permit fees and public service charges, which are also sometimes referred to as a utility charge. So to kind of walk through the three key differences between these, franchise fees are charges that the county would impose on the actual utility providers, typically as a percent of the gross revenue that they are collecting from their customers inside of your jurisdiction. The nexus or the basis of that fee is that these individual utility providers are receiving benefits from using your rights of way, either just benefits of being able to install their infrastructure there, and sometimes it's for exclusive access to a group of customers, where you've granted a particular company the ability to serve the area, and are withholding competition from others because your right of way is limited and you are allocating that space to an individual company that's going to best serve those customers. So that is one particular version of this. We also have utility permit fees. These are again fees that are charged to the utility providers themselves, but rather than being kind of a broad-based tax for the benefits that those companies are broadly receiving. This is instead a smaller scale fee to recover the costs of your staff people as they deal with issuing permits for those utility companies that are frequently coming in and doing some sort of construction activity in the right of way that requires a permit. And then the last version that we have on the slide here, public service charges. These can also be called utility tax or a municipal service charge. This is a charge that is not on the utility companies themselves, but rather on the individual customers that those utilities serve. And this charge is not for, let's say, cable television or for water or any of the other utility services. Instead, it's for a service that the county itself provides, law enforcement, parks, transportation. But you're using the utility bills of a utility provider to collect your separate charge. And so it's a way of administering a local charge that you would impose on your own customers within the county. But rather than you setting up your own payment system, your own way of collecting and imposing this fee, instead you're partnering with a utility company to be able to have them send out those charges on your behalf as part of their regular billing process. And they collect it and then remit the money to the county. So for all of those types of fees and taxes and charges we're looking at, the first question becomes, is this legal? Does the county have legal authority to impose this? And the short answer, which is also the incomplete answer, but the short answer appears to be no. So there's this revised statute 758.010, and it says, except within cities, so cities are carved out and they clearly do have authority to do these things, but outside of cities, any person has a right and privilege to construct, maintain, and operate its water, gas, electric, or communication service lines, fixtures, and other facilities along the public roads, across rivers, and over any lands belonging to state government, free of charge, and over lands of private individuals. So, on the face of things, this is saying if you're trying to charge the utility companies for having infrastructure in your right of way, that is not allowed by state statute here, unless you're inside city limits. And again, almost all cities in Oregon have some form of franchise fees because it is specifically allowed for them. But that's not the end of the story. As we dig deeper into these individual types of utility taxes and fees, we actually do see several versions of this where there is legal authority, or at least a legal gray area that seems that it allows counties in Oregon to impose these taxes. So the first one we look at here is for the utility permit fee. And this is just recently allowed for counties. This was a recent legislative change from just about exactly 1 year ago, allowing counties to charge permit fees on utility providers for the permits that they are pulling inside your jurisdiction. These permits are limited to $500 per permit. So this is not a giant windfall of cash that we're talking about here, but that can be indexed to inflation to increase over time. The program is also currently temporary, set to sunset in 2031. That's not uncommon for the way our legislature works, having any kind of legal framework that they kick the can down the road, and then we'll get 6 years from now, the legislature will be faced with the decision on whether or not to extend the program further. But for the time being, it's very clearly allowed for counties in the state of Oregon to impose these permits. And we are just seeing the first counties implement the resolutions and ordinances that would allow them to impose these fees. So this is just getting up and running in some of the other counties across the state. In terms of the revenue capacity we're looking at here, county staff pulled their past permits over the last 4 years, how many were issued to utility companies, and we saw that it was on average 98 per year, so just right around 100. If we were looking at 100 permits a year at $500 per permit, we're looking at $50,000 per year of revenue, adjusted for inflation over time. However, there are some exceptions to this, and some of the types of permits are not eligible to have this fee charged on them. So it's likely going to be lower than 50,000, though it's going to require some more homework to really parse out what percentage of the average 100 permits per year would be eligible to charge this fee on. but still looking at something less than 50,000 per year. So real money, but not the kind of money that is going to allow you to pursue your wildest dreams. The next version of utility fee that we looked at was this public service charge. In terms of legal authority, there is nothing at all in the state statutes that allow or prohibit a public service charge. This is just something that was not contemplated in our state statutes. Because of that, it's a bit of a gray area. But that's a gray area that a great number of cities across the state have rushed into, as they've all been looking at plugging holes in their budgets and looking at the options they have available to them. They see this and they see no prohibition at the state level. And so cities have been implementing these like crazy across the state. And because there's no enabling legislation and no framework for it, there's no maximum amount of charge. There's no public process that's required for adopting them, no requirement for a public vote. There's no limitation on what the funds can be used for. It's a really kind of wide open, Wild West sort of a tax or charge here. Ultimately, all that's required is that there be some sort of rational nexus between the amount that you're charging and the benefits that those properties are receiving for that charge. And so we'll see a lot of times folks do this for public safety or transportation, and the enacting jurisdiction will say, on average, every household in our county or our city receives this amount of benefit from having a safe public environment. And so we are going to pass the charge equally to all households. Same thing with transportation, maybe doing a bit different for land uses of multifamily versus single family, but by and large having a per household charge that you then wind up including on a utility bill for a utility provider that serves the area. Well, I've said that cities have been doing this over the past few years on a pretty substantial clip. I have not seen any other counties in Oregon that have taken this approach yet. So if you were to take this approach, I believe you would be the first county to do so. And anytime you're the first county to do anything, you want to make sure that you've got a strong legal opinion that says, yes, we do believe that we have authority to do this. So that is something that you would need to take a look into before moving forward with it. That being said, the potential revenue here is significant, and given these numbers, may be something that you're interested in moving forward with. The amount of the fee, again, there is no maximum. We've shown here in this hypothetical analysis a rate of $12 per month per household or per customer that the Tillamook People's Utility District serves. With that fee, or the amount of that fee, we came up with by looking at 10 different jurisdictions in the state that have imposed these public service charges, and they ranged anywhere from $4 a month to $70, $80 a month, so a very wide range. But they do cluster around $12, and that was the average amount that we calculated of these example jurisdictions that we looked at. So $12 a month for these types of utility customers, if that were imposed countywide, has the potential to generate annual revenue of around $3 million per year. And if this was limited to only the unincorporated portions of the county, you'd be looking at $1.8 million per year. What we're showing here is not a specific proposal. If you wanted to move forward with this, you need to identify what are the services you'd want to fund. You need to come up with a sound methodology for the benefits that each of these customers are receiving. Evaluate whether this dollar amount feels appropriate for your community. But this certainly does show that looking at the average rates that other communities have imposed, it could be a potentially significant source of revenue if it felt appropriate for your community. Then the last source or the last version of utility taxes and fees that we were looking at are franchise fees. When it comes to franchise fees, cities have broad authority to establish them for a wide range of different utility providers, but counties are much more limited. statutes for Oregon only specifically grant the authority for counties to have a franchise fee for solid waste and recycling. That being said, there is very clear statutory authority for that, and it's a option that many counties across the state have imposed. We have also seen through our research a number of counties that appear to be collecting revenue through cable franchise fees. We have not seen anything in statute that shows authority to do so, but I'm looking at the budgets of other counties and I'm seeing cable franchise fees as a revenue line item there. So there's a bit of a gray area on that. That being said, I reached out and spoke with one of the cable regulatory commissions in the state that provides cable franchise fee revenue to Multnomah County. And I originally went to reach out to them to talk about their legal authority to do so, but quickly became aware of the revenue picture that they're facing. And with the change in technology that's going on these days, and less people watching true cable television and more people switching to streaming, the number of customers and the number of cable providers has been dwindling pretty rapidly. And that's been resulting in a pretty rapid decrease in their cable franchise fee revenues. And so at this point in time, the cable franchise fee, the legal question of whether or not you could do it doesn't seem that relevant given the rapid decline that those revenues are facing. It's possible in the future that the federal government makes changes to the regulations and would allow you to impose franchise fees also on broadband internet, which would be, it's the same infrastructure as cable, but currently you're not allowed to charge for that service. And if that ever were to happen, then this would look very different in terms of the revenue potential and would be something that would be definitely worth exploring. But at this point in time, it looks like franchise fees are really limited in terms of interest for the county to solid waste and recycling. We looked at examples from other jurisdictions on how much they were collecting per capita using their solid waste and recycling franchise fees, and saw a pretty wide range of what other communities were bringing in, from a low of $3 to a high of $14, with an average of close to $9 per capita. If we applied that to the unincorporated portions of Tillamook County, we'd see that raising somewhere between $60,000 to $230,000 per year at an average of $148,000. In order to really dial that in, you'd have to have more detailed conversations with the actual solid waste providers here, understand the total magnitude of the revenues that they're charging for customers in the unincorporated portions of the county, and be able to apply whatever percent you'd be imposing on their gross charges to figure out exactly how much revenue is at stake here. But again, it's a non-trivial amount of money, anywhere between that $60,000 and $230,000 that we're currently estimating on an annual basis. So based on all of that, to implement a solid waste recycling franchise fee. It's expressly authorized in statute. There is no question on your legal authority to do so. Many other counties do so. Many other cities do so. So you would just be imposing a fee that is widespread and common practice across the state. The county should seek to implement a utility permit fee. Again, this isn't yet a widespread practice because the enabling legislation was only passed last year, but it is a common sense measure. This is new legislation. You've got these permits that are being approved already. You have staff that have to take time to review and approve those permits. And so recouping the cost of that staff time at $500 per permit, every little bit helps. And so that's a reasonable measure for you to take, and something that could be implemented fairly quickly to generate some additional revenue. The county should conduct additional feasibility on a public service charge. So this is one, again, where you'd be the first county, as far as I can tell, in the state to do this. There isn't any clear enabling legislation, though no clear prohibitions either. So you'd really want to make sure that you feel that you're on solid footing from a legal authority perspective. And then there's a lot of work to refine exactly what services you'd be dedicating this charge to, and what's a reasonable rate that you should be imposing, and how does the general public feel about that. You know, are they accepting that paying more for that service is reasonable for the county to be able to provide the level of service that customers really deserve here? And then the last recommendation is that the county should not implement a cable franchise fee at this time. Again, going back to the conversations I've had with other cable franchise fee entities where they are pointing to significant and sustained declines in that source of revenue going forward. So we have next steps for each of the three types of franchise or utility taxes and fees that we're recommending. So on the utility permit fee, you'd want to do additional analysis to refine the revenue forecast. So again, this is going back and looking over all of the permits in recent years and looking at the list of exemptions to the permit fee and seeing, okay, we thought it was 100 per year. How many of those 100 would really be eligible for this charge? Is it all of them? Is it half of them? What does that mean for the actual revenue potential here? So you can get a better understanding of that before implementing anything. You'd also want to obtain sample language from the other counties that have established these permit fees. There's a good chance that the language that was used in Multnomah County a few months ago to establish theirs is going to be a pretty good template for you all if you were to think about implementing a similar fee here. And then conduct outreach as necessary to the key stakeholders. Here you're talking about the utility companies that are pulling those permits and the general public overall to see how they feel about the proposed new fees. And at last, after all those steps, draft a board order for you all to consider imposing that utility permit fee. On the solid waste and recycling franchise fee, some fairly similar steps here. One, and in my memo, some of this was to say, do we want to impose this county-wide, or do we want to impose this just in the unincorporated areas? In preparing for this PowerPoint, going back over the materials, it looks to me that this would only be in the unincorporated areas. So that kind of question mark has been resolved. The statutory authority does limit it to only the unincorporated areas for counties imposing these. Nonetheless, I do think you want to continue to do outreach to the cities inside Tillamook County to find out who is imposing their franchise fees on solid waste and recycling already, and what rates are they charging, because that context I think will be helpful as you're thinking about setting your own rates and looking at the revenue potential based on how much those other cities are currently earning from their franchise fees. Again, conducting the outreach is necessary to the solid waste and recycling franchisees and the general public to make sure that everyone understands how this would work and what the impacts would be moving forward. If those franchisees, the folks that are providing your solid waste and recycling services to the county, if they are able to
Nick, we lost you.
county, that would be
We had a blip for a minute. Can you back up about 15 seconds?
Oh, sure, no problem. Sorry about that.
No, it was our blip. Thank you.
So, other than public outreach, after conducting public outreach, it would be terrific if you were able to get from all of the existing franchisees.
I am not losing internet when you are, and it looks like others can continue to hear him as well. Seems to be more of a root issue.
Okay, well, Debbie, do we need a pause for a second, or do we?
I don't think, I have told them about it this morning, and they're looking at the logs to find out what happened.
Okay.
I don't think they can do anything.
Okay, we're just gonna keep moving forward. If you could start again about bullet point 3.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right,
Sorry.
no problem at all. Fingers crossed, we make it through to the end. So reaching out to the existing service providers, if they're able to provide you with data on the number of customers that they're serving in the unincorporated portion of the county and how much they're charging those customers, that will be really helpful for being able to refine the revenue forecasts from this potential franchise fee. And then again, reach out to other counties that have imposed these franchise fees already. There are many counties across the state that are imposing these fees, just to get example language that you can look at when drafting your board order, and then revising that language as it fits to the county so that you'd have a board order for the commission to consider. And then lastly, on the public service charge, this is again with the one where you'd be the trend setter, the first county to pursue this. So we really recommend that you would have a legal opinion to confirm that this is a valid approach for you. And once that has happened, if you do feel that it's legal, then it comes into really defining what this charge would look like. There's so much flexibility here that that's sort of a blessing and a curse. And so you need to make sure that you go through and very carefully and thoughtfully identify what is the service or multiple services that you'd like to dedicate the revenue to. And based on that, what does that mean for the rate setting methodology? How do we think we're going to determine how much each household or business across the county benefits from this particular service and turn that into a rate that we'd be charging them? Once you've identified the service and the charge, you'd also need to coordinate with the PUD as the utility provider that serves the entire county. They'd be the ones that would need to put this on their bills, collect the revenue, return that revenue to the county. Doing so is going to have a host of logistical issues for them. There's going to be some added cost to them on their bill collection. And so it's important to negotiate with them to see how that partnership on collection might work. In addition to that, whenever there's a new tax or fee, outreach to the general public is really important. We've certainly seen in other jurisdictions where there hasn't been successful outreach, there can be pushback and objections from the public to moving forward with any sort of a fee like this. And if you go through all of those steps successfully, then it would be, again, looking to, in this case study cities, because there's so many cities that have done this, but not counties, but looking to cities for copies of their ordinances or resolutions that have established these charges to use as a template for you to consider drafting your own board order. And that's the end of our presentation on that today. So questions or discussion?
Perfect. Thank you, Nick. Appreciate the information. Commissioners, questions?
Thanks. Well, I'll jump in. Hi, Nick. I'm Mary Faith Bell. I'm the commissioner. Thank you for your work on this. This was very interesting. As I think Rachel mentioned in the beginning, when we were told about the franchise fee in the city, it just sounded so easy. So this is a lot more complicated than we were led to believe initially, but certainly still not impossible. I mean, there's all kinds of potential here. So I appreciate your research and your information and your recommendations. And I'm wondering if we were to move forward with all those recommendations, would all of that come through a utility bill or would there be other ways?
Yeah, so the franchise fee would be a charge on the utility entity itself, but they would almost certainly want to pass those charges on to their customers. And they would almost certainly want those customers to be aware that they're not the ones raising the price, but that this is a pass through to the county. So that one almost certainly would show up on the bill, but it's not required to. That's just how it would work out. For the public service charge, it definitely would show up on the bill because you are billing the individual customers, not the utility company. The utility is just handling it administratively for you to be administratively efficient. The permit charge most likely would not ever show up on anyone's bill. Again, we're talking about $500 permits for individual construction projects that the utility companies are working on. The total amount of money is relatively low. I don't think that they would try to turn that into some sort of a rate adjustment that they put on the customer's bills. I think that would just be out of the pocket of the utility providers. So that one I think works a little bit different. But the other two, I think you definitely would see them on customer bills. And so hence the importance of that public outreach, so that folks aren't surprised by seeing a new fee show up on their monthly bills.
Thank you.
Which is the trash and recycling is an interesting one because we have a solid waste service district that is sort of part of us, but not quite. And then we already approved the rates of our haulers. So I guess it just all fits inside that window when we would tell our haulers there's a franchise fee, and then they would come back to us to set the rate reflecting their additional expense. Because there is a profit cap, if you will, that they all have, that is monitored, and is it every 2 years? It's every 3 years, maybe. Rachel, is that right?
I'm not sure Justin's online if.
Just, yeah. I know we redid all of those in this last year. I think we redid all the rates.
Hello, commissioners. Can you hear me? Justin here.
Ah, hi, Justin.
Hello, everyone. So I did look through the report that Nick generated and had some comments. And we currently do have in our conditions of franchise agreement a franchise, what we're calling it, an annual fee. They do pay $75 per vehicle. And that's collected typically in January. So that's typically, and when I've looked at past invoices, it was turned to franchise fee, but we don't have anything that is based on a percentage of revenue or something along the lines that Nick outlined. So we do have a franchise fee, I would say, but it's not as robust and percentage based as the potential that Tiberius did propose.
And currently it's $75 per vehicle, and that's part of what goes to run your district, right? I mean, that's part of what goes to you.
Yeah, that is all included in our internal invoices and comes back to the Solid Waste Administration Fund.
Okay, so we'd want to be thoughtful about that if we were to think about adding something. Thank you.
Mhm.
Other thoughts or questions on that? Maybe while we have Justin, although he looks like he's sticking around.
No, I just appreciate seeing all this work done for sure. It's not,
That's it? Yeah, nothing?
I got nothing.
So I just wanted to confirm, there is a prohibition on the broadband at this time, right? We can't charge, because, we have the onshore cables, but technically I assume those are broadband.
Well, that was-
Yeah, it's been, I actually wound up, although I reached out to this Cable Regulatory Commission to do research for your project. After talking with them, I'm actually doing a project with them now, forecasting
You're
some
welcome.
revenues for
You're welcome.
them.
Do we get a kickback or a franchise fee for that?
Yeah, I know, finder's fee.
Finder's fee.
But
Referral fee?
it's frustrating because, in the state of Oregon, in most counties, by far and away the largest provider of cable service is Comcast. They are running the same wire through the right of way and up to people's homes that provides both broadband service and cable service. But their customers might be signing up for a broadband package rather than a cable package. And based on what package they subscribe to, one of those is eligible to charge the fee on, and the other is not. And it makes no sense from a regulatory perspective as to why we can charge for the use of our right of way for literally the exact same wire, but we can't charge a fee because they're calling the service something different. But nonetheless, they have a lawyer who specializes in these federal cable negotiation issues, and they have identified that this is kind of a hard line in the sand. That right now there is no wiggle room to be able to overturn that. It's possible in the future with different administrations at the federal level that might change. So I do think this is something to keep an eye on. But at this point in time, yeah, they are struggling hard to be able to make ends meet with the revenue declining as fast as it has been.
Bummer. We're those darn undersea cables. We were super
Well,
hopeful.
that's the question. You're talking about residential cable, but one of the questions we're asking, I'm not sure if you did the research on this, and this wouldn't be a very regular basis, but we have these, well, except for maintenance. But what about landing fees on these large underground, fiber optic cables coming across the ocean? Have you?
Yeah, do they land on county-owned land, or is it land that's owned privately
They
by
landed on
the?
private land, but then they're using county
Yeah.
right of ways to move it. And I know, like,
Yeah.
locally, I believe the port actually made quite a bit of money by charging for the use of their right of way, the railroad track,
And they have landed on county property before.
and they have land on county property.
Yeah, I think on this question, what I may do is actually provide you with the contact information for the attorney that I've been in contact with there that specializes in franchise fee, cable franchise fee issues, because that is a very unique question that you have there. There aren't a lot of jurisdictions that happen to have access to ocean across the ocean large scale cable network that's landing here and then being disseminated elsewhere. So I don't have an answer on that question, but I have been in contact with someone who I think is the foremost expert on this topic. And so I'll get that contact information over to you all to see if they might have a better advice for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think that was certainly one of our hopes is that undersea cables landing and then, because they traverse Tillamook County and we get nothing. We don't,
Mhm.
for most of them, we get no connections out of them. We get nothing. They
You get a
just,
building permit, that's it.
Yeah,
That's
and I
it.
think Sarah's been looking at those.
yeah, they just travel across.
And we undercharge in the building permit, in my opinion.
For that,
Yeah.
especially for that.
Yeah. Just looking to see if I was just making little scritches while you were talking.
I was encouraged while Commissioner Scar looks through her notes. I'll just say I was encouraged to hear you talk in the beginning, Nick, about that you've done this work for a lot of other municipalities and counties, and that you're working on other things for us. And I'll be interested at whatever point in your project with us to hear your suggestions about things that we haven't even thought of, we haven't approached you about, because I think there are all kinds of opportunities for generating revenue. We hear about different random things that other places are doing that I'm sure there are a lot that we don't know anything about. So I will be interested to hear, as you learn about our county, what you think might work here that we might not even know about yet.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of options that we've recommended adding to the list right now. So, you guys have been doing a lot of times I'll come into a jurisdiction to work and I'll come in at the front end to help with the brainstorming process. And, I've been pleased to see all the work that the county's been doing over the past year to think about options for raising revenues and for reducing costs. And so there's lots of good ideas that you've already come up with. And we've added a couple of additional suggestions, but we're hoping to really be diving into that really any day now to start that evaluation. So
Great, thank you.
So, did you have some other questions for Nick?
No, I did not. I just had weird scritchy notes.
Okay. Well, interrupt if you can interpret
Okay.
those and you want to throw them out. So just some additional information and then want to hear the board's feedback on how to proceed, because some of this ties into some other things that we're working on. You may recall when Susan Corbacero was here, right before she left in 2019, she, at Commissioner Bartline's request, had compiled a catalog, if you will, of all of the fees at the county. It's a several pages of spreadsheets, which department, board orders, resolutions, etc., that captures the county's fee structures, and then compiled the supporting documents. And so we have that, and it hasn't been updated. And so in this time of wanting to basically do that again, it's a big body of work. I gave it to Nick. So in this Nick's work, I don't know how much he's going to be able to do that within our existing scope, but I want you to know that what's the county doing about fees in the line item that he was given. It was marriage licenses, passport, etc. I just gave him the etc. and it's exhaustive. So there's that piece. Additionally, in that conversation about the fee catalog from 2019, Deborah and I were talking about incorporating in the budget request to departments some kind of request that asks departments to provide back to the treasurer's office what your current fee schedule is. Do you have recommendations? Very specifically, instead of, it does sometimes come through, but this would be a part of the request. So I don't know how far along they are in working on that, but it is something that was talked about. With regard to all of the other concepts that he's working on, they are actively working on that. We've had 2 the last 2 weeks, we've talked about their progress. At the last meeting, Nick and his team presented the framework of potential criteria by which they would apply to all of the concepts. Some of them we were kind of starting to dabble with, like how easy is it? What's the political appetite? You know, cost benefit, those sorts of things. So they have some initial recommendations for those criteria. We'll run those through the executive team and provide feedback back to Nick's team, and then they'll start running that evaluation, and then we'll review the data that comes out of that. Additionally, we have talked with Nick about providing a scope and cost estimate for the financial assessment, as well as the financial plan, to see what we're looking at for that in time and scope. So those are processes that are officially in the works. The ball started. So with that, that is where we are in all of this financial work, and looking for the board's direction on how to proceed. So you heard his recommendations for proceeding with the permit fee, the public service charge, and franchise fee. I would further recommend, if you were interested in pursuing those, the utility permit fee, as he described, is pretty straightforward. It's a board order. It's a relatively nominal fee. It's the most straightforward of the three to accomplish. I would recommend, and I've already talked with Chris and Sarah about this, that, and Deborah, that Chris and Sarah take the lead with Deborah running financials to try to move that one forward. Lots of steps. There's additional steps on top of Nick's, but I think that's something we can do in-house over time, and I think a relatively short order, and bring some information back to you. And potential adoption by the end of the year, I think, is calendar year is realistic as well. Similarly, with the franchise fee, and I did talk to Justin and I think Chris about it. I can't remember if Chris is on the email, but definitely talked to Justin about a similar approach of having Justin take the lead in-house with Deborah running the financials. Obviously, the solid waste committee would be involved, but I think that's something that they could start working on as well. And then if the board was interested in proceeding with the public service charge, that's obviously a more in-depth process that I would recommend, given the complexities, potential for missteps there. I would like to work with Nick on having him provide more capacity and support through the process. I would see not an arrangement that we just completed with the utility assessment, meaning Nick, go do all this work, report back once a week, and we'll make sure we stay on the right track, but more of a guide Deborah and I and maybe other members of the executive team to begin moving this forward in a longer term manner, but not having as much work on his plate, putting more of the onus on county staff, but spreading it out over time, because it looks like there's going to be some ebb and flow to some of this work. And I've asked him to prepare a scope and budget for what that might look like. So some forthcoming information there as well. So yeah, today before you is an approval to proceed with all three of these.
I support that, and I like your reasoning. I agree that the permit charges are probably the easiest and most straightforward, and fastest. And I'm glad to have Justin dig in and work with Deborah on solid waste and recycling. And I think we should explore further the public service charge. So yes.
Thank you. I did forget to mention one other thing. Part of the reason I wanted to bring up the assessment and the financial plan is we'll start working on this if the other commissioners agree as well. But I just kind of want to flag, especially coming off of the TLT discussion this morning, we're talking about potentially 2 more fees in the next few months on top of the TLT. And I know we're looking at different sectors, but there is a potential for us to move at a pace to implement 2 of those without the financial plan and without a financial assessment completed. I don't need an answer right now. I'm just saying it's been in the back of my mind. I keep saying it in all the budget roundtable meetings and these financial planning meetings that I think it would be great to have all of these in a plan that shows all the revenues, where they're going, where we're looking at streamlining services or trying to reduce costs. So it's a complete picture. So when you're faced with constituents who are debating these fees, you're not just talking about the benefit for one and so I just want to flag that I think I would recommend moving these forward, but the timing of the implementation is a concern of mine.
Yeah, and I would say moving them forward to me means doing the research. It doesn't mean doing the implementation.
Yep.
So I think
Yep.
that might, you know, and I don't know if that's what you meant, or if you meant gung ho, set them in motion, or if you meant do the research.
I would suggest that we move forward entirely with the permit charge, which seems to me like something we should have had in place 10 years ago. So, and the others, you know, figuring out strategically when to move forward with them.
I'm very concerned about what you just said. I'm very concerned about, with the radio bond so close in the rearview mirror, and today, I think this is part of a big picture. I want to see the complete picture. I think it would be, I'm not comfortable even considering a public service charge until we have looked at how our departments can cut or consolidate or control some of that expenses and stuff. And I feel like going right to the public, like I want to keep the conversation as we're exploring, we're looking into it. It's on the paper and it's part of the big picture, because we keep talking about that. None of this is the golden ticket except for a public service fee, which just puts it right on the backs of the public that we just asked for $24 million from. So I am very, very aware, and I would be very hesitant to say, let's go do this except for the research, which is what I'm hearing from you. I think,
Yeah, and I think we're all on the same page. I think that, again, however, other than the permit fee, because that was something that was passed in the legislature in the last session. So it is a new opportunity, and I would love to hear from Sarah who we're talking about with utility permits and what those exceptions are, and, you know, to have that information in front of us. But would consider moving that one forward, as it's a new fee that's allowable. It has never been allowed before for the utilities. So I would like to look at that one as, to Commissioner Bell's point, as a possibility to actually kick off sooner rather than later. The rest of them certainly with a lot more caution.
and I would just say almost in a blanket term, I'm fine with all of our fees being looked at and raising them all and attaching them all to a CPI index. So, I mean, I feel like that should have been done years ago. We're in the spot because we didn't do it. So I'm all for that. I think that's reasonable. I think the public thinks that's reasonable because everybody else is doing it. Like, I've already seen on my electric bill, my homeowner's insurance just went up $300 to pay for houses that were on fire somewhere else. So I feel like that's a little bit more reasonable. So, I mean, sounds like we're all on the same page.
Yep.
Big picture, get all the
Yep, let's
information.
get all
in
the
there.
information that we can.
This is so helpful. I mean, this.
Oh, it's
to
great.
have this
It really
for all
is
the other
great.
Things is
Yeah.
fantastic. So thank you, Nick.
Right, yeah, because I assume that getting a legal opinion on the utility charge is also, or the fee, whatever we're calling it now, the public service fee charge is gonna take a little time as well, because
All of
nobody's
it
done
will.
it.
Yep,
You know, I mean, it's
yep.
gonna take some digging, not only probably in Oregon, but in other states, to try to figure out what is, since no one's done it, what are the legal pieces to it and so forth. So I think the research is great, and I was looking to see if the media was here. I don't see Will here, but to lead everything with that there's research, which is nothing different than what we've been doing, and nothing is being implemented in this moment.
And to clarify, the utility permit fee are permit fees that actually go through Public Works.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So the
Perfect.
data that
public
Nick
works.
was referring to, those are permits issued that I've already got from the Public Works Department.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, so I am clear. So we will just start moving ahead as staff has capacity to do, and Nick's team has to do, and Deborah and I have to do.
Do we have any kind of a timeline for the rest of the work? Now that we've gotten through this work, I know that was step one, and then with the scope
Yeah.
of work that you're getting, or is that?
So I'm not going to put Nick on the spot here, so don't answer.
Yeah, well, I
So
was
we,
gonna.
so we are a little bit behind schedule because of the utility fee assessment took a little bit longer, and so I would say a couple of weeks behind schedule. So Nick presented the update for the framework last week, so at our next meeting, I was going to ask Nick for an updated schedule
Perfect.
on the next steps. Yeah, and I think it's. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but I think our scope might be building a little bit with some of the there's a lot of good things to look at. So I think he'll have a better sense of what a more realistic timeline is now that he's been diving into it. So I'll report back on that.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. Nick, thank you for being with us
Thanks,
today
Nick.
for the presentation. Sorry about the technical hiccups, but we made it through. So thank you.
Thank you,
Nice to
Nick.
meet you remotely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Look
thank
forward to
you
seeing
all.
You again.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right, moving on to our next topic, which is mediation services and grant funding. Commissioner Bell.
Well, I think we all received a letter from Tillamook Office of Mediation, TOM is what they're calling themselves. And, oh, I wish I remembered the woman's name. What is it?
ELY, but is that her last name?
Yeah, okay, we'll all think
I
of it.
didn't print that one out.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
I did, it's sitting on my printer. So we now have a Tillamook Office of Mediation. I think we all know this. I think we all, Elizabeth Bly, well done.
Not Eli, Elizabeth
Bly.
Sorry.
I think we all heard about this in the LUPSIC meeting. So we have been without mediation services since 2019. And this is very exciting. There's a new mediation office. There's a biannual grant process. And they sent us the steps and the process. If we want to, the county would have to apply for the grant or identify Tillamook Office of Mediation as the agency that we would want to see receive the grant. So we have to be involved in recommending the grant recipient. We have to jump through some hoops to apply for the money. So basically that's it. Elizabeth Bly reached out to me. I didn't invite her to a board briefing to talk to all of us before I talked to you about it, but I think that's an appropriate next step. We would have to announce our interest in the grant by March 31st. So if we talk to Elizabeth in the next week or two, we can make a reasonable decision. Just, at a very superficial glance, I don't know why we wouldn't apply for that grant for their services, but maybe there's a reason. And nobody else is providing the services, so there's no competition. So that's what I know about it. I think it's worth inviting her to a future meeting and learning more.
So I invited, so we get these requests every year, and we haven't had anyone to run with the program. It used to be managed by Marie Heimberg, if you remember, through the juvenile department. So Isabel has the most familiarity with this in our office, so I asked her to attend today to provide a little bit more background. And you may have seen her send that initial email around to staff. Isabel?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, it is Elizabeth Bly who had reached out from the new organization. So essentially, these are biennial grant funds that are available, and the University of Oregon School of Law sends out the notice and invites the county to participate. And what that means is that we go through the noticing. If we choose to participate in the selection process, we go through the notification process. We have to notice in the newspapers and several other public places that these grant funds are available, and interested parties, candidates reach out to us, and we provide the grant application information. And for the last, I think we started, the county's been involved in the mediation program since 2007. And throughout the history of that, right up until 2019, as Commissioner Bell noted that was the last time we participated in the program before Marie retired. And before that, it was the health department that provided the mediation services in conjunction with there was some justice court funding and some funding from the juvenile department, because of some of the mediation services that were provided were small claims, school behavior, community disputes. That's where the supplement funding came in from those departments. And it would truancy mediation, organization facilitation for the Board of Commissioners, disgruntled employees, workplace mediation. So there was several services, and it wasn't the health department and Marie, it wasn't just the grant funds. There's additional in-kind donation and funding from the health department and justice court and juvenile department. And in the 2017, the last time we participated in it, it was a joint partnership with Marie was working with the health department, but she was also, I don't know her technical title, but she was part of a nonprofit called Conflict Solutions. And through the Conflict Solutions, Marie submitted a grant application for the funds for 2017 through 2019. So through the whole process, the Board of Commissioners recommended that we accept her application. They were eligible. And then the funding actually goes back to the University of Oregon. And they're the grantor, and the grantor provides the funds to the grantee. So I'm maybe Sean, I don't know if she can correct me, but I don't think in this particular case the funds would actually come through the county if we were to award the recommend the grant to Elizabeth. So I think the agreement might come through us, but I don't think naturally we would manage the funds. And unless I haven't heard when I sent out the notice to everybody, I haven't heard anybody from the sheriff's office, parole and probation, justice court, or the health department, if any internal department were interested in picking up, having these additional grant funds. So the only party that is interested at this point is the Tillamook Office of Mediation. But the other part of this is that the county has the option to opt out of the grant selection process. So we don't have to be involved in this for these grant funds to go to the mediation company. The process, we just have to officially, the timeline is the county adopts a, if we decide to get involved in the selection process of who gets this this funding, then there's quite a bit of work that's involved to manage the grant application selection process. But the county has the option of opting out of that selection process, and then the University of Oregon School of Law dean would pick up the selection process. And I confirmed this morning with them that when a county opts out of the selection process, the dean of the School of Law assumes the county's role for the remainder of the process. So they would manage receiving the application, they would manage all the noticing, and then they would work with the prospective applicants to help them submit applications and bring all the eligible applicants to the School of Law, and they would make that selection for us. So if no department within the county is interested in receiving or applying for these funds and providing these mediation services, then I think, and Commissioner Bell knows, there's not a lot of competition for these funds. So the School of Law would, after Elizabeth submits her application, if we opt out, then she would most likely be awarded the funds. I hope that makes sense. I went down a roundabout way, but
Makes sense. Thank you so much, Isabel. I speed read this, and so I thought that the opt-out option was we could just opt out of the funds. I didn't realize we could opt out of the process of awarding funds, which seems like a great idea.
it does, and I think
Best thing for us to do, right?
back in
That is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. And
We have someone in our community that's likely to apply for it for the first time in forever. So,
and I think that's really great that Matt Fennell had reached out to her and suggested she contact us, and she did. And so the next step, if we were to opt out, would be we would just have a letter before the board that gets signed, and I submit it to the University of Oregon, and they accept that as a formal response, and then they move forward with the process, and they do all of the work to go through the selection process. They receive all the applications, make sure they're all eligible. And as I said, when I spoke to them this morning, they said they're aware of Elizabeth's organization and they worked very closely with her in the past and seemed very positive. And so I think the funds would most likely go to her if she were to apply. And I think that's the intent, is for her to apply. And because when we opted out in 2019, Tillamook County went without those mediation services, and they were some of the money that would have come to Tillamook County went to Hillsborough in Yamhill County, and they provided sort of basic gap services to some Tillamook County residents, but it wouldn't be the same level of service that Elizabeth would be able to provide. So the funds were actually went outside of the county. But they provided services for Tillamook County residents, just not in the same capacity that Elizabeth could provide.
Perfect. So I think what I'm hearing is a consensus that we would love to have that letter in front of us for the option to opt out, knowing that the background work is being done with Tillamook Mediation to ensure that they will have the opportunity to apply and will highly likely be awarded those funds. The only piece that if it comes through us, then I think we can assure they get those funds, but it doesn't sound like that's an issue. So opting out seems like our best path forward to not burden our staff.
Well, there is that part where we wouldn't be, if we opted out, we wouldn't be involved in the selection process. So we would lose a little bit of control of that process, where we're handing that off to University of Oregon to make that selection on our behalf. And if some strange reason multiple applications came in, then it would be up to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is possible that the funds could go outside the county again, but still provide the services within the county, because I think part of the eligibility is that the provider does not have to reside in Tillamook County.
Right.
So.
Right.
But I think maybe before we move forward with the letter, it might be worthwhile for me to reach out to the county departments again and see if it's confirmed that there is no interest capacity for them to provide the services, and then if that's appropriate.
Yeah, to my knowledge, we just don't have anybody trained, anybody doing mediation at all
This money's been available
since 2019.
Yeah, so we haven't had anybody step forward asking for this.
And it requires you to train community mediators and manage a volunteer program of community mediators.
Yeah.
So I think I can fairly safely speak for the health department that the answer is no, thank you very much.
Mhm.
I know they tried really hard last time. They really tried to come up with some solution, but it just wasn't. They didn't have the staffing.
Well, I think for everybody to know that there is the Tillamook mediation program that's been formed and is kind of working through becoming more sophisticated. It sounds like that. I think most of our departments will also be like, hallelujah, this is great. It's a service we'd all like to see, but nobody really has the expertise or capacity to take it on. But yes, if you want to send out one more email that says, hey, we think that, we just want to double check with county before we choose the opt-out function, in hopes that, the Tillamook mediation program will be able to apply and receive.
They sound very enthusiastic, and so yeah.
Super. So, and also, maybe this isn't necessary, but it's interesting to me. I would like to invite Elizabeth Bly to make a presentation to us, just to let us know what their, tell us more about their program. What have they got going?
Yeah, and I think the question is, I know she popped into Lipstick. I wonder if Lipstick would want to have that more full presentation, or if it's just us.
Well, she said she would be interested in presenting to the commissioners, that she could certainly do both.
That's true as well.
Would you want
Maybe we
that?
could do a board briefing, or
Oh, I was wondering if you'd want that, if we're looking at a public service, if you'd want that at a board meeting,
Yes,
maybe after she's accepted, maybe, I don't know, I was just thinking that. It might
right,
be-
as education, because it'll be live streamed and videotaped, and then the community would know we now have mediation again, because we haven't for a long time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It sounded from the pop-in and Lipstick sounded like she was fairly fresh to getting it started. I think that would be the only question, if she's ready for a board meeting presentation. Then that'd be entirely up to her.
Yeah,
If
you
she
could
felt
find
like
out.
she was established enough and ready to kind of put that out in the community, or if it's a little premature, if she just wants to give us an update. So maybe we just need to suss that one out.
Okay.
Would
Thank
you like
Mel.
me to, Commissioner Bell, would you reach out to her, or would you like me to reach out to Elizabeth?
I'd be happy to. I will
Sorry?
do it. I'll do it.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, perfect. Anything else on the mediation services?
No.
Wonderful. Commissioners, updates.
I can't tell if I'm having an allergy attack or I'm getting a cold.
Oh, come on. I feel great. I even doubled up on my vitamin C today.
The thing I wanted to tell you all is that yesterday. Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah, you know, I have allergies.
We're fine. I knew we could start over there.
I have allergies, and so a lot of times I'm having allergy attacks, but this just seems to be progressing. I want to tell you that yesterday I was at the fairgrounds for the fair board meeting. And before the fair board meeting, I had a chance to visit with Cammie, and we talked about the TLT grant application process. And I wish she had been here for the meeting where we were discussing it, because she had information that we didn't have in the room, including, and it was compelling. She said, you know, you guys, you commissioners didn't know that the lighting for the tennis court / pickleball court, that the fairgrounds, that wasn't their application. So that application came from the community group that runs the pickleball club or tennis club, or maybe it's combined, I'm not sure. So they want more lighting because they use the facility and they don't feel like it's bright enough or safe enough, and they want to use it at night because it's super popular. So they tried to apply for the grant, and they couldn't because they're not a 501c3 or 6. So they went to the fairgrounds, and the fairgrounds said, well, this isn't our project. This isn't our deal. You know, good on you if you want to go get this, but it isn't our deal. But then Cammie said, well, we do have the Fairgrounds Foundation Board that you could apply for it through the Foundation Board because they're the 501c6, I think. And so that was how that happened, but it wasn't a fairgrounds project, and it also was not a Foundation Board project. It's a pickleball club project. So she wanted to talk about, she thinks it's appropriate, and I agree, at least on the surface, that if communities are asking for uses, are seeking grants for community uses that are outside of the scope of county functions or fairground functions or whatever, if it's a community group that's applying for it and not the fairgrounds itself, should the community group not be able to apply? Which I thought was an excellent point.
Just to be clear, though, they are getting funded somehow, whichever way.
Yes, but when we agreed to do that, we thought we were funding the fairgrounds, but we're actually not. Now we're funding
Well,
the
but we are
pickleball
funding
club.
permanent lighting at the fairgrounds, correct? Or are these stanchions that the club will take away when they go?
No, I think it's permanent lighting, but Cammie's point was that they wouldn't have asked for it. They don't need it at the fairgrounds.
Sure.
Like they're not opposed to having it, but it really isn't it isn't something that the fairgrounds would spend their facilities money on.
Right, and we're not asking them to spend their facilities
know.
money on it, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's another piece of Rachel's brow is furrowed.
No, I'm
Oh my
that's
God,
my,
how do we
no, that's my
untangle
deep
this,
thought.
right? But I think
Yeah.
it's a good point, and I think there's a number of places and spaces, right? You know, we're working on the NETARTS park,
I was just gonna say the
right?
park
It's
is,
a great
they
thing.
had to
It's-
form their own. I think the thing is
How do we do it when?
perhaps
it's
there's a way for, maybe Nan can help facilitate finding, oh, you want this, but you're not a 501c3, try this organization. And then during the presentation process or grant process, they specify that.
Well, and ultimately,
Like, it's a pass through.
right, and it's a pass-through to a county property is a little bit different than if it was a pass-through
Yes.
to a different piece of property,
Mhm.
right? Because we only have so much that we're putting out into the community for their other things. But when it improves our property, even if it's asked for by an outside group, how do we want to handle that? So I think this is a great piece for us to tease apart in our how we amend our process going forward
Sure.
next week. Yeah, because I do think when it becomes the property of the county ongoingly, is it appropriate that we pull from the pool of resources that's available to the community for something that we're gonna ultimately own? Ongoingly?
gonna-
Yeah, of course it's a word. I
So-
saw it in something somewhere.
Okay.
So your current facilities policy, which I think we only really adhered to maybe 1, maybe 2 years, because this just keeps evolving, and that's fine, is you have a reserve fund where we intentionally save money for big projects. You have the county grants and you have the community grants. If it's a project led by the county or it's county property, it's in there in that process as a separate process. And we have just gotten away with that in part because of the evolution. Visit Tillamook Coast has been leading the process, and it all became one series of grants, and we've just been doing county projects without a process per se. And so it just, but to go back to where we would have been is it would be just a county process regardless of who's asking for it, because it's improving our property, which is why we stopped Cape Mears in part, which is why we stopped the Netarts Park, which is why I started to stop the rodeo infrastructure and the lighting project, and then that kind of started opening up a can of worms that needed more conversations. So I sent them back in, but yes, it all needs to be talked about and re-clarified, and we're going to start that next week.
Yeah, which is a great opportunity as we look at what we're doing with the 70%.
Yeah.
Yeah, making it more accessible to the community in these situations.
Right, yeah, so yes, I think ultimately we got the right resolution, and we do just want to talk about how does this work moving forward, because if, the question that immediately pops into my mind is, does the Board of Commissioners want to start entertaining small grant applications from outside organizations? Or do we want Nan to do that for us?
Yes, and right now you're doing little ones and big ones. You did the NCRD pool, that didn't go through process, for example.
Right.
And so, yeah.
And that was not county property, and we have the Air Museum, at least saying they're coming to see us for the.
Sure.
Read that in the paper.
Yep.
So I think, well, I mean, they had also talked to us all. I don't know if they had talked to you yet, Paul, but they'd talked to Commissioner Bell and I before you got seated as a
Well, I
commissioner.
got cornered by a couple people.
Mhm.
Perfect. So, not that we totally didn't know. Sorry, the way that came off in case the pub, you're like, who's listening? We did know, but to your point, yes, we have the ones that we've chosen that have a county nexus that we continue to give to on an annual basis, the Salmonberry Trail, Pioneer Museum, the fairgrounds, and then we have these other ones that are popping in. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's time to revisit.
Yep. And the TAC did reconvene to go over the recommendations, and Nan will be coming back next week for final approval. So you can talk about this all over again.
Yes, and it would seem like if it was going to be fairgrounds as a great example, we would have probably should have had a letter from Cami that said, yes, we are in support of this for other county funds or whatever. Would be good to add to the process.
As well as the property owner signing off on the project.
Yep, exactly. Because we wouldn't want to do to the fairgrounds something they didn't want
Yes.
if a community group asked. So many fun layers to work through. Anything else, Commissioner?
Good for now?
Yes, stay over there.
I really didn't plan anything, although I do have something that I wasn't going to share publicly, but I will because we're all here and we can talk.
Yeah.
This was something that I think would be more in your line of sharing, Mary Faith. But I had lunch today with one of my liaison department, Assessor Larson, and she shared with me, and I know you'll be interested in this as we're working on human resources and creating more a different culture in the county. One of the things I really thought was great was for Valentine's Day, they have made these signs for each person's workstation. I'll pass them over to you, where everybody gets to write something nice about that person,
Oh, that is nice.
and either leave it anonymous or not. And I thought
Mhm.
that's pretty fantastic.
That is
That's
nice.
cool.
And you start reading these, and it's just not a bad thing.
Old school Valentine.
That's what I think. I laughed. I immediately thought of you. Well, and Mary Faith, but I thought of you because we were talking about how we, make this place a more, fun place to work for people, so that's my sharing.
It's a
is-
great idea.
Well done,
Yeah.
Cassandra.
And they had the potluck last week. I think that this is great, and I think there's a lot of departments that are talking about doing this. I just want to, I think it's fantastic,
It is great.
recognizing employees and recognizing everybody's strengths and stuff, so.
Agreed. I think there are many things that happen at the department level that are very, very positive that way. I attended the Christmas party for Department of Community Development, right?
Yeah.
And they have a great time together. They go bowling together, they go and do trivia together. They have a lot of activities on a regular basis as a department. So I think it's wonderful that that happens, and I think I'm hoping that other departments do it as well beyond the ones that I'm aware of, and that somehow we are empowering and supporting that
That's the point.
in the
Yeah.
culture. So that, because sometimes it's easier and more comfortable to do that with your department to start with at least, before you're, wanting and willing to show up at larger county functions.
Yep.
So, cool. Thank you for
Like you
sharing.
said, that's it. I wanted to leave it on a positive note because you look like you want to go take a nap.
I do feel a little bit exhausted.
Now that you mention it, huh? Okay, I do not have anything to share today. Rachel, anything from you?
I didn't have any fires to put out the last 2 weeks, so I've been moving on started my list. which
That's
is really
awesome.
Great.
That is exciting.
Good. Yay. Well, and you had those nice weather days at home to just check off the boxes, right? So I will share.
Emails coming in.
Yeah, that we
Mhm.
don't know where the weather's gonna go. Randy and I are gonna have a conversation this evening in order to queue up a potential for the morning. There is an expectation of either rain or snow or sleet or freezing rain. Any of those are possible, and any of them are possible starting anytime between 3 a.m. This evening and going until noon or later tomorrow. And then there will be a brief reprieve, and then it appears that it will happen again. So, no decisions have yet been made, but just a heads up that we are watching the weather closely and will likely make the call at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Okay, I thought that was, it must have changed, because I looked at a
Sure.
map
Changing.
that showed that
Might
it was
have to
just
change Mike's
Portland.
meeting
Yeah,
again
it
if you
keeps
can't make it.
changing. So this morning, it was not
It's
calling
Friday.
for it here, and then before
Can
I
we
walked in
reschedule
here
for
at
Friday, or is that
1:30, it was now
next week?
calling for it here. So,
I have it on my,
Randy was gonna get some specific
it's Friday.
spot check data to
Yeah.
help us have this
Oh,
conversation.
no kidding.
There's a little sidebar here because I was just saying Mike's coming out on Friday, but if the weather's bad, also I forgot to mention the Colpack meeting, which was scheduled for tomorrow in Bay City, is now virtual only. So
Okay, right.
it is available if you guys want to know.
And back to the weather notification, so we wanted to set up we have the
Everbridge.
phone list for leadership. We didn't have it for managers, so we weren't able to text managers last time, and then something happened with Ring Central. So over the last week, we've been able to work, Randy's been able to work with Mackenzie and Everbridge and get manager cell phones into Everbridge. And he sent out an email to the county managers listserv this afternoon saying a test text is coming. So I don't have my phone, but maybe one's already come out. So that should be, you haven't gotten it yet. So he was hoping to do that before the end of the day. So that should be up and running for notification. So if there's something that needs to come from Aaron, there should be a personal and or work phone text, whatever is given to HR, and an email. So that should be covered. That should cover our bases. So that's exciting. And so that was the first step, is to get that set up. And then I've had an account, and you all will need to log into just so you can send those notifications out. So that's forthcoming as well.
I'm taking some classes in Connecticut remotely, and I got woken up in the middle of the night and answered my phone, blindly, like thinking it was some and it was a notice from Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut that there was a late start.
Oh,
You're like, thank you so much. Good to know. Okay, yeah, so we'll let you know, but it's just not looking good for tomorrow if things go the way they say it's gonna go. So we'll find out. So then maybe you'll get a day of rest.
Yeah.
A forced rest, and Rachel can check the rest of things off her list.
Yeah, but tomorrow morning, if it's not bad weather, we have Civic Advisory Council.
We do.
You haven't been to that yet?
Did you get the invitation? Are you? Civic, oh, So,
You're automatically in.
I didn't get it. I'm not going. I didn't have it on my calendar. It doesn't exist.
7 a.m. It's a
7
lovely
a.m.
thing. It starts at 7 a.m. It's at the hospital. It's the Civic Advisory Board for Adventist Health. Happens quarterly. Quarterly? Yeah, it's quarterly.
I'll be in my
7 a.m. They
pajamas.
feed you breakfast. You can attend remotely,
You
but if you
get
go
hot-
to the hospital, they feed you breakfast.
You get hot breakfast.
Okay.
It's
And
up on
They
the.
gave me lunch the other day for the wellness committee.
See, there you go.
Third floor, boardroom. Eric's meeting.
Okay.
It's always interesting. Nice people.
Yeah, and it's normally, I guess it starts officially at 7:15, I think.
Yeah.
But, and then we often do a tour, so it's 7:15 to 8:30, and then we do a tour of some part of the hospital.
Fantastic.
Which is always optional, but
Okay.
Katie is the one who sends out the
Oh,
invite.
she just, you know what? She may have sent me one today.
Ah,
I had a couple of emails from her, so she probably did.
Yeah,
Okay.
check for that.
I will check.
Okay, online, anybody online? I see we still have a couple people with us. Joel, anything?
Nothing today, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Cassandra, anything more you'd want to add? Good work in your department?
She's gonna kill me for sharing that.
I am a little embarrassed, but it's been a really great to just kind of share the professional appreciation towards each other. Yeah, so
That's good.
Good work. Under Sheriff Kelly,
thank you.
anything for us? Okay, not
Nothing.
hearing?
Yes,
Probably
he
is.
definitely is.
Understandably so. Okay, with that, then we will adjourn this board briefing at 3:24. Thank you, everyone.